Zach.
Good morning, Tom. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to have you. You've been on my list for a long time. I'm glad that I was able to get you. I know you're a busy, busy person, but I'm happy that you're willing to share your values, your superpower, kind of some of the work you do. And so let's have at it. We got 7 minutes, so let's take advantage of it. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then your values and superpower.
Sure. So we'll do a quick elevator speech. Good morning, everyone. My name is Zach, and within student affairs, as well as in the medical field, within everything from working on an inpatient unit to also helping create LGBT patient curriculum for different hospital systems. So, really grateful for the career that I've been able to have and the connections I've made. Launching into my values. Um, One of my values is not being a morning person, so I'm sorry if there's so much bass in my voice. It's not usually like this. My first is empathy. I think that when it comes to how we can really learn as a people, I think is empathizing and understanding that though we might not completely understand something, we can at least try to empathize with others' lived experiences. The next is self respect. I think that it's taken me a long journey to understand that that's more than just a mantra, that there has to be a level of self respect and there has to be a level of understanding your value in order to navigate this crazy world that we're in. So you have to have that kind of foundation of self respect before you can have other things. Learning, because I think learning is my next value. I think that that launches into all of my things that are my value system, because I think that as much as empathy can be an innate skill, I think that if folks can learn to empathize and learn self respect, I think that that can be how we can change the world. I think continuing and being open to learning, I think understanding that whether it be a formal higher education path through learning or whether it just be from gleaning little gems of information from folks that we're interacting with in our life, I think that being open to being a lifelong learner is something that can help everyone. Um, and one of the big reasons why higher education was such a big part of my life and my professional career as well. And next is adaptability, because if we can't adapt to things, then how are we going to be able to get things done? I think that being flexible and being adaptable are really important, because if you can't roll with the punches, then you're just going to be stuck scratching your head thinking, why isn't something going according to plan? So I think being adaptable is really important. And I thought long and hard about how all of my values added up to my superpower. And that was kind of difficult because I kept finding words that were already on the list, and I didn't want to kind of bend the rules. So instead of picking a value, I picked something that wasn't on the list. And I think duality is really important. I think that when we think of duality, oftentimes folks can think that it's very heady or woo woo. But I think if we can think of things in a dialectical or and shades of gray, I think that's really important, because I think regardless of the situation, it's very few and far between that things are black and white. I think that there is a lot of duality that happens within numerous situations, to where if we can think of things in a little bit more empathetic light, so understanding that there are multiple perspectives and that the intention isn't always what is the outcome. So understanding that duality is so important to keep into consideration whenever we're approaching any situation. And I worked with therapists and I've worked with my own mental gymnastics to make sure that that's something that I can apply to everyday situations. And though it might take up a little bit more brain space and it might take up a little bit more time when making a decision, I think that thinking of basically any situation in a sense where there's space for duality can take up more time. But I think it's important, because then more folks and more lived experiences can come into play.
Wow.
And good morning, everyone who said good morning.
I was, I mean, it's fascinating. Duality is, yeah, no one has ever picked duality.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic.
Fascinating, fascinating. So when I saw that, I was quite intrigued, and I'm curious. I'm curious. Can you tell me? Can you share an experience where you're using duality? Maybe something that's happened, or something you can share a little bit more about, so that we can better understand.
Sure. I think that I can think of so many situations where it's hard to narrow it down to one. But I think anytime there's a situation where we are having our kind of knee jerk or gut reaction to something. So, like, oh, this person did this because of XYZ. Just taking a moment to pause and think, like, okay, I don't completely understand where this person's coming from. There's no way that we can, as much as we know folks and as much as we've interacted with folks or people have been in our lives for a long time, we don't completely understand where someone is coming from to be 100% because we're not in their head. So I think taking a moment to pause and be like, okay, there could be more to this than what is on the surface level. So let me take a moment to consider that before I choose how I react. So taking that moment to pause and say, okay, let me choose how I want this to affect me. Am I going to let this affect me in a way that my blood pressure's up and I'm ruined for the day, or am I going to pause and say like, okay, there could be different reasons for this, and though my knee jerk assumption is this, maybe it's something else. So I've just had that happen, everything down to like having conversations with my parents of just like, oh, well, I can't make this. I have a work thing. And then hearing my parents' reaction and understanding that their reaction is not on face value of, oh, Zach's trying to get out of something. It's more of they could be having a reaction of, I just turned 30, so they want to see me. And so they have this completely different understanding than what I'm able to understand. So just taking a moment to pause and understand that we don't always have the full picture. And so being able to pause and to consider the other person's interaction is always important to me.
And so obviously the empathy comes in big time as well, right?
Oh yeah.
Very, very cool. So a couple questions before we wrap up. One is, tell me what's it like in your role at Stonewall? What do you do? And how do you feel like you're expressing your values there?
Yeah. So my role with Stonewall has shifted in the year and 2 months that I've been there. So when I
Mhm.
first started, I started as the manager of programs and outreach, and I've now been promoted to the director of programs and marketing. Which, if you worked in programming or within marketing, you know that those are two different fields and those are two different areas. But my background within arts and my background within programming just kind of melded together to make that happen. So a lot of what I try to do in living out my values is to bring that into the things that I'm creating. So when we look at some of the visuals, whether that be for social media or for prints that have been coming out of Stonewall, what I've tried to do is create a more human kind of experience. So like it's easy to throw up words on a white text and say like, here's what's happening, but to be able to communicate that through mirroring our community, whether that be through stock photos or whether that be through pulling from the 40-year archive of photos we have of Pride and so many different events that Stonewall has had. I want to mirror our community to where folks can see themselves within our programming. So taking that my values and kind of translating that within our marketing materials. Just doing my best to make sure that folks can see themselves within their community center and creating pathways where if folks don't feel like they can see themselves, we can find ways to make that happen. So I've been really lucky in the time that I've been there to have some support as well as some involvement from community members to say like, hey, I want to do this, whether that be a program or an event, and finding ways to help make that happen so that folks can feel like they are more connected with their LGBT community center.
Sounds like the perfect job. Love it.
Well, thank you.
And lastly, I'm just curious, what are you most hopeful about today?
Uh, it can be hard to be hopeful. In the time that we're in right now. But I think that as we look at history and we look at how there have been many times within history where it's been hard to find hope. But I'm grateful that as we are moving forward, we can also look at the other piece of history where humanity has really triumphed. Um, and I'm holding on to that.
Cool. And then what's the vision look like for you? What is the future? What does that hope look like? What do you want the world to look like?
I think my answer would have been really different before 2020, but I think without bogging it down with details or with professional aspirations, my goal for the future is to be surrounded by people that I love and to be able to have the stability and freedom to, if I want to do it, I can do it. And if it makes me happy and it makes others in my life happy, and I'm able to do things to make others in my life happy, then I want to be able to do that.
Awesome. Well, I think the values that you live are going to help make that happen. I just want to say thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for living your values. Thank you for connecting folks in our community. And our community is everybody, right? I love that about
Mhm.
Stonewall. Everyone is welcome, everyone. But you're a big part of that. And so thank you for the work you do, because I think obviously you're making things better and probably giving a lot of people hope as well.
Oh, Tom, you're too sweet. Thank you.
All right, Zach, thank you for joining me today.
Of
Remember,
course.
even when it's really damn cloudy out, the sun is always shining. You are the
Yep.
sunshine, my friend, right?
Oh, get out. Thank you.
All right, you take care. Have a great day today.
I will.